one of the things that stuck with me was the plastic bottle monster. So they had used kids from the library to turn cardboard boxes into the plastic bottle monster to collect supplies for an art project. And so it was just this really cool monster. So instead of just a box set out for collecting something, it went above and beyond. I thought that was great.
Yeah. There was a lot of really cool ideas, and think tanky kinds of stuff could happen here too. Yeah, it was excellent. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, we'll move along now to acceptance of the agenda. Now, I didn't know whether there was, are we changing it?
Yes.
Can we add 9.3?
9.3.
Potential Kenwood
Okay, yep. Potential Kenwood historical designation.
Yes.
Anything else?
I think Councillor Pearson.
Okay, with that change, I need a mover and seconder for the agenda, approval of the agenda. Jennifer, Rich, all in favor? Thank you. And the minutes of the last meeting, attachment 3, were there any errors or omissions? Did anyone notice? No? Okay, again, I need a mover and a seconder, please. Claire, seconder, Nick, thank you, all in favor? Thank you. Now, presentations. First one is Youth Services Plan. She's already up there. My goodness, I think, oh, she's left. Okay. Thank you.
Do you want some lights turned down?
Let's see how it comes up.
And pull in our judges. I mean, this project is really a community endeavor. Every year, all of our judges are local authors, local writing instructors. Over the years, we have had Power of the Pen participants that have gone on to be writers in their own right and doing all sorts of different things. So we really wanted to take an opportunity to celebrate that this year and look at sharing some of the archives. We've got some fantastic images from Power of the Pen in years gone by, and pulling together a really exciting experience for this year's participants so that they can really see their experience in the spectrum of what we've been doing with this program over the course of the last 20 years. And our last sort of big area of focus is our youth services spaces. Obviously, we're tremendously excited about the Waterdown branch opening in the fall. And we really wanted to take the opportunity to revision and look at what we're doing in terms of our family spaces. I know a number of years ago we had implemented sort of this play corner concept where we wanted to make sure that our family spaces were really engaging and they were providing opportunities for families to explore literacy and learning in new ways. And I think with all of the digital tools that are available to us and some of the art opportunities as well, that the time is ideal in terms of taking stock of what we're doing and really imagining it in new and exciting ways. So that's sort of another key area for us this year. So I promised I would be short and sweet, and I was. So those are kind of our big project areas. Obviously, all of our core programs continue, and all of our wonderful staff continue doing all of that important work. But these are just some of the areas that we're going to be focusing on this year and in exploring some new ideas and some new possibilities. Does anyone have any questions?
I think that the numbers are absolutely tremendous. I'm always wowed by.
We needed to give them more. We needed to tell them our story, because we're all about stories, to help them develop our logo. So in our story, we talk about who we are and what we do and how we offer information, we offer inspiration, we offer them the freedom to explore, we offer warmth, we offer them rules, but we give them an awful lot. And then we also gave words that we feel describe describe who we are. And we use such words as creative, historic, community-minded, community-committed, that we're a hub, that we're fun. We're also very organized. Not many people can process as many items as we do. We're relevant, responsive. These are all words. And these words are really important, and the words that we stress are very important. They're so important, we've also asked the public for their input. This was about a year ago. Tell us, give us the words that you think of when we talk about HPL. Well, we gathered them and we made them into a word cloud. Now just visualize a word cloud. Usually there's a couple of dominant themes in your word cloud. All right, hope you're ready. This is our word cloud. Friendly, knowledge, fun, awesome, quaint, cheap. I prefer inexpensive. But you can see how rich that is. But as one of my colleagues in communication described this, is that it is overwhelmingly positive and positively overwhelming. So how do we capture that? How do we create an iconoclastic image that represents this? So we gave this challenge to the designers, and I'm very happy to report that things are progressing well. They've been able to distill all of this information. They have connected with us, and we're very confident in the process and the direction they're moving towards. We're going to, hopefully by next month, be able to share with you a finalized logo. We're also moving forward and letting you know that the website architecture continues to be developed, its function, its functionality, and the processes that we're going to use. Also, we'll be doing an implementation plan because, as you can imagine, this has a lot of facets. The website alone has a lot of facets involved to it, but rolling out a new logo is going to be quite comprehensive and fun. And of course, the launch will be in conjunction with the website. And then we'll be going with a long-term brand management strategy, which will feed into marketing and public relations and our key messaging. So, in short, a very exciting time, very pleased with the logo refresh process at this point, and just trying to tease you a little bit in anticipation for next month, because I think you will be quite pleased. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So, Madam Chair, Melanie, the logo though will come back to the board for input, for possible suggestions, or is it just coming back for information and folks, here's what we're running with, and hope you're all happy. If you're not, too bad, we're going with it type of thing? Or
I believe the process at this point is that we're going to be doing with the staff working committee, discussing the different suggestions and reiterations, having them to work on, and then provide you with the big reveal for your approval.
but again, Chief Librarian, that's for the board's input. I mean, if we're totally hypothetical, which I doubt, but if we're totally, caught off guard and we're going, my God, how did they come up with that? There will be opportunities for input and suggestions. It's not just here as a ratification, if you will.
And I think, yes, and what I'd say is that we are going to be bringing this back. I think we're quite confident that the board is going to be quite pleased with the direction that it is, but obviously we'll take that input from the board. So we're pretty confident, and I think we thought it would take us longer to get to this point. So we'll be sharing that next month, and certainly looking for your feedback.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Melanie. Thanks, Madam Chair.
We want you to be as excited and embracing it as much as we think you will.
Anyone else?
I would like the word cloud on a poster, t-shirt, and bag.
All right.
I will wear it every day. So that's all.
That's
Yeah. It's really fun.
Anyone else? David,
Well, I,
come on, David.
I,
Well, there's an opportunity there to raise money to pay for the advertising.
There we go.
Yes.
I would come back to what the Carnegie said. Libraries are created to create real and permanent good. I know it's it's cliche and it maybe kind of dumb, but man, that sticks in my head, and it always has. You know, and if you come up with a slogan like that, like the hub for real and permanent good. You know, that's my.
No, I just wanted to say that I think some of the questions that David had about our marketing strategy. Now, one of the reasons why we redescribed the position that Melanie has got to emphasize the communications and marketing is Melanie has a lot of experience in this. And I think moving forward as a library system, we realize that, and the logo refresh is just one aspect of this recognition that we need to spend more resources and more effort on getting the word out. And as we get into new things, such as maker spaces, that are supporting digital literacy, it's very important people understand what we're doing and why we're doing it, so that we maintain that support. So I think there's no magic bullet to the marketing efforts. It's ongoing and sustained, and I think Melanie's been doing a great job on helping us move forward.
I just wanted to mention, just so everyone knows, when we did the library in a word exercise, it was done in each location, and a word cloud was developed for each location based on the input of their community. And those word clouds are have been made available to be on those LCD screens in each location. So people can say, basically they see the screen that says, "You told us we were," and then you have the kind of cloud.
Anyone else? Thank you very much. Okay, I see once again we have no consent items. So we'll move along to business horizon 6.1, low barrier access card.
Thanks, Susan. So we've had a few opportunities to bring this to the board sort of for background. So I'll leave it to you if you have any questions. We did reach out to the Vancouver Public Library. As you said, they were sort of leaders in this area. Unfortunately, they don't have their numbers sort of quite finalized yet to be able to share them. But they assure me that they're happy with the direction that the program is going in. I think we've been very fortunate to have our community development worker pilot start in January, and we already have a number of possible clients for this type of a card, people who have expressed an interest in learning more about the library and the types of resources that would be available to them, but who have real and significant barriers in their daily lives that make our full privilege card inaccessible for them. So did anyone have any questions? We'd be happy to answer.
I'm curious. I know, oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm not a yell. I think my voice is carrying me to the other side of the world. I was curious about the line that says, in the attachment, that they will have to pay for any lost items. Now, I thought part of the problem here was these people have no money, a lot of them. So how are we going to have them, I know that we're going to do this, that if I think it was 2 items and then they can't borrow, but how would we ever enforce paying for something that was lost?
Well, it's something that we do all the time in terms of our existing privileges. I think where we sort of fed into that piece, and it is a piece with the Vancouver Public Libraries program as well, is that as much as we want to make this card available, we also recognize the library's responsibility in terms of nurturing and protecting the resources that we make available. So it's that fine balance of figuring out a way to make that happen. Michael's staff always have conversations with people in terms of ways that we can work around some of those challenges that people face related to those. But I think, you know, something that we recognize that we heard from the board and that Vancouver recognized as well is that we still had to have some checks and balances in place in terms of making sure that we were extending opportunity, but also respecting our resources and our collections. So I don't know if you want to add to that, Michael.
Were all written letters. In this case, I know Karen Anderson actually penned a letter to Mr. Hutton in 2011 because he was receiving some papers from Block Street. And anyway, what happened was at Central, there were a couple people that the policy procedure continued, and that didn't come to light until recently. And so what we found is that there were still a couple arrangements that were going on that were inconsistent with what was happening around the system. So this is a new, in that since 2007, he has been coming and picking up old copies of the Globe and Mail, and he was informed that we're discontinuing that practice.
Dave?
Well, I was going to say something stupid. Get with the program. Get a computer. Are we going to stop giving up? I mean, subscribing to physical newspapers maybe sometime in the near future? And then all this becomes irrelevant?
Well, and Michael would be better informed on how, and there still is use for some newspapers are very
Absolutely.
popular, and so we're not planning on
They're still
this.
heavily used. The ones that we have, the local ones, the Globe and Mail, things like that, they're still heavily used. Trust me, every time I try to get rid of them, the branches yell at me. So, and it truly is not that expensive considering how many newspapers we purchase. You might see less, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about library press display when I talk about circulation later on, and that might draw people away from it a little bit, but I tried to show library press display to Tom when we were on our branch tour, and he just kind of looked at me and said, not me. And so I want Tom's So we don't spend that much money on newspapers and periodicals anymore, and I think we're at a very comfortable level in terms of what we get back from them. So that one will slowly fade away, I think. People still, I'd still like my newspaper.
How many people are interested in having the newspapers, the 2-month-old newspapers? Like, how big a problem is this? Why are we, I mean, are we not accommodating it because it's a one-off or because of the staff time? Or what is the issue here that we can't provide this gentleman the papers?
Well, I think, and Karen maybe was more involved a few years ago. No, we have not done this as a system since early 2008, end of 2007, for operational reasons. So what was happening? There were operational problems with doing this, and so we, as a rule, try to be reasonably consistent in how we approach things. So there's always some flexibility, but people were asking for papers to be held aside for them. What was happening? A couple things. A, papers weren't, sometimes people wouldn't pick them up. So that was a problem. Another problem was that they're taking up space in our locations. In some cases we had people both wanting the same papers, and so then you have conflicts around that. Our procedure is very efficient. You know, when we dispose of things in our material deselection, it either goes to the book, pretty much goes to the book sale, or gets recycled, and so it's more efficient for us to actually recycle those than us to start putting them out and then having. And then I think the other concern is there's some issue where there could be confusion about people walking out with discarded papers that are in fact current papers. We're not putting tags on them. We're not doing that. So there's a number of reasons. It's not that you couldn't do it, and I think Karen and I had quite a conversation about this. We could do it, But the thing is, it's going to take time and resources. And he has written this letter to the board chair, so we brought it to the board's attention. But it really, unless the board wants to change the policy, it's really an operational issue that isn't, I don't see it as a board policy issue.
And the reason this happened was that not everyone was following the policy. And so there were special favors being done. And then it came to light, and it was like, whoa. And so, of course, I mean, his letter is, I think, a very reasonable letter. There's nothing, he's not like hysterical or anything, but he was getting special privileges. So, he's probably, I mean, wouldn't you try? You've been getting special privileges for 5 years, and they're suddenly told no. I think, I don't think he's really overly expecting, but it's worth a shot. And we are going to review this anyway, but I know I talked to Paul about it, and it sounded like sort of a messy kind of process to have to go through all these papers, which is probably why it ended up saying, we're not doing it anymore. That's it. Yeah. Anyone else?
So we need a motion to
Yes.
receive the letter.
A motion and a seconder to receive this letter. Nick and Amanda. All in favor? Chief librarians report. Attachment 8.1. Now, this is again received, right?
Unless anyone has any questions?
Am I up?
No? No? Okay. Mover and seconder to receive this. Jennifer? Councillor Pearson? I gotta try to remember to say that, not Maria. All in favor? Thank you. And now, Michael, circulation report. Action 8.2.
He wants to show
Oh, you're gonna show us stuff.
He wants to show some
Their
charts.
bar graph?
Oh, no.
Yeah, I didn't get this one, so we're gonna have to live with the choices of my bar graphs, or not.
Not accept this report.
Letting this warm up a little bit.
Your position noted.
As is tradition, I'm here to kind of go over some of the numbers that I've tabulated in terms of 2013 circulation and some of the trends that we're seeing. Is this thing shaking? Let's just start overall the number, and then I'm not sure if this actually matches the report because we're still kind of playing with the numbers, especially with this, but we're playing with the numbers in Virtua and just trying to kind of finalize and be comfortable with the numbers that we're getting out of there. I think we're almost 99% comfortable, but the number that I have is 7,245,133, which is a half percentage point off of last year's total. Print continues to decrease, which is somewhat predictable. It went down 7% last year, but media has now sort of taken that turn, got over that apex, and it was down 0.4% last year. Digital collections were up 30.1%. A lot of that was driven by the addition of Zinio, and Overdrive ebooks and e-audios continue to rise. E-audio did very, very well last year. I think they're just riding the coattails of the Audible revolution and podcast and everything else. People are taking out more and more audio. Also, a lot of audiobooks are now available in MP3, which is compatible with just about every device. And Overdrive is actually moving everything to MP3 over the next couple of months, so that's a big boon to that service. These are the ebooks borrowed per day chart. I kind of give this one to you every year. This is, if you can't see, a little Christmas gift. Or might look familiar to you. There's all physical items versus all digital in 2013. As you can see, we've gone from 3.6 in 2010 to 10.8 in 2013. I think the more telling graph is this one here, which is basically we'll take books, magazines, and spoken word audio, and versus the digital equivalents of Zinio, Overdrive, and what am I missing? Tumblebooks, and I think that's pretty much it. And so in 2010, that was at 6.3, and now it's almost 20%. So we're seeing the change. This is a great map, because I think if there's one format that has just the bottom that's dropped out, it's mass market paperback. Those are romances, you know, the little books, the romances, the ones you bring to the beach. As you can see, in 2008, we were circulating about 350,000, and at that time we didn't even have ebooks. Now we circulated about 350,000, and the mass market is just on its way down. We've actually cut back dramatically on even purchasing mass markets. They're just not circulating anymore. Okay, this is something that Paul had asked me to sort of show. If you take the Overdrive circulation and consider it a branch, you've got the 2010 totals right here for each branch. The numbers are in hundreds of thousands at the top. And then, okay, wait for it. Okay, that was the first animation I've done in a long, long time. The 2013 cert, you can see it's climbed to less than Terryberry and Turner Park, and it's very likely that it will surpass Terryberry and Turner Park next year. And then this is another one we were able to keep track of. Like we get the demographic data from the cards of people who check out ebooks or e-audio, so we can tell like what their home branch is. And you can see like places like Ancaster and Dundas, the percentage of circulation is higher, you know, in e-audio than it is for print circulation as opposed to the system. You can see Central is very high in physical. The interesting one I thought is I just took the rural ones. I took the Flamborough, Binbrook, not sure if I added anything else, but like 7 or 8 of the smaller branches. You can see there's a lot of use of e-audio and ebooks out in the rural areas, and I think that's we're getting a lot of circulation out of those areas, which we generally don't from the physical side. DVD has finally sort of, you know, it just went, and then we just have finally sort of to go down, and we expect that to continue. I think Netflix is having a dramatic effect on DVDs now. I also think there's a lot of free stuff, illegal stuff out there that people are using that is cutting into that. I use Netflix now on a regular basis, and it's changing everything, and I do think we're going to start seeing a decline in the use of DVD, although Blu-ray continues to go up. And the format that would not die, the CDs, as much as we try, they just keep going and going. This is at the top as music CD. It actually went up last year, and then books on CD, it kind of took a bit of a turn in 2009 when we really started using e-audio, but it has really held its own all the way through to 2013. Why not keep buying it if it's going to continue circulating? I just wanted to talk a little bit about library press display. I don't think we've really talked about this much at the board before. Press display is essentially Zinio for newspapers. We've had this for quite some time, 6 or 7 years, and it really kind of was a product that was before its time. We sort of stuck it out. Last year they added the Hamilton Spectator, and circulation or use has just gone up dramatically. Now, because it's a measurable use, like if we have databases and you can't really fit that into a circulation sort of mode. Some libraries try to do it, but it's just impossible. But with this, we can see which newspaper gets checked out and how often it gets checked out. So this year we were going to add this to our digital collection tally. So, and it's just a little demo. You can see here's Hamilton Spectator here. You can actually just click on one of these. If I clicked right here, I did this screen right here, and it's a little easier to read here than it would be in the visual. There's a lot of things you can do. You can share it, you can print it, you can listen to it. I don't remember what that is, but you can also change the font very easily with the slide bar. There's a lot of great features on this. I highly recommend you go take a look at it. All the major newspapers in the area are available. Toronto Sun, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, and this as well. Melanie was going to remind me, I just wanted to show you something very quickly. We are going to be working this year to do a lot of marketing of our digital collections now that Melanie's here. We're going to be meeting actually
tomorrow to talk about it. I just wanted to show you one thing very quickly. No pressure. Somebody talk. Somebody talk. Ask a question. Go ahead.
Is Library Press Display a website or an app or a?
It's electronic database. It's under digital collections on our website. You click on digital collections. It's the last one in the right column. This is we've been talking to Midwest Tapes, is the vendor that gives us Hoopla, about trying to get more people to use Hoopla, because really right now it's not. What we talked about is the possibility of just taking something like this, putting inside all the cases for the DVDs and the music CDs that we're purchasing from them, as a way to market the product. These are people that are probably the most, our biggest potential customers for this. So they're going to be putting this inside each of the cases. So every time somebody opens up their case that they take from the library, they're going to see this inside. Hoopla is growing. The video's still a little bit, the content isn't great. The music is
To maybe at least send that around to us at some point?
That's, yeah, I can do that right now. Sure.
No, you can't make the channel, but so when we do discuss branches, we can see their trends. That would be handy. The second one that Claire sort of touched on, is there any possibility that Press Display will have an app in the future?
Well, I'm sorry, and if I missed that question, I apologize. It does have an app, but you cannot download it remotely. You have to come into a library IP in order to download it. They promised me that they're working on that. That's why we really haven't pushed it.
So the app you can get, but you can't get the content without being on the library.
And his staff are doing a great job and in terms of being responsive. And our board direction is quite clear in that we're committed to the maintaining physical collections as we grow the digital, and that we're going to be relevant and responsive. And they're keeping the eye on the ball on this. I think one of the other things that people need to understand, when we start changing buying patterns, some of that will be more a matter of how many physical copies do we buy of a particular title. It's not that we won't have a physical copy in the library, or we might have 10, but where we might have needed 50 copies a couple of years ago, we might need less physical copies than we have in the past. So we're maintaining physical collections, but we just need, as Michael says, the mix needs to be evolve as our community needs change.
Okay, mover and seconder to receive attachment 8.2 circulation report. Rich, Linda, all in favor?
I object to one draft.
Oh, thank you.
David?
Me?
Yeah. Report from the audit committee, audit chair?
Yeah, we
Audit
met.
committee chair, I should say.
Yes, we met Monday, February the 3rd, 4 o'clock, right here, for about an hour. In attendance, everybody was present. Nick was an alternative, he wasn't here, but he didn't have to be here, the rest of us were here. And the auditors, which KPMG were there with their, this document, which is in your package of material, is really an outline of how they plan to proceed with the audit. And it's simply, it's more or less a formality we have to go through to get the process started, where they set the parameters and we can question the parameters that they use, and it lasts about an hour, and that was it, from 4 to 5. Any questions? Everything seemed to be straightforward enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, no. Yes,
So more
Jennifer.
comments. So there's no change to the plan from prior years, or they're following the same processes. I see there's a couple of accounting standard changes, but that's the only thing of note, really.
Yeah, and there's a quite a long, lengthy document there on not-for-profit organizations. Like, there's been some pretty bad examples of not-for-profits getting into trouble, and I guess the federal and provincial governments are trying to turn the screws on these people. That some not-for-profits are really not-for-profit, and of course there's been some trouble with them. And but that doesn't really apply to us. But they threw it in there because I think their mandate is that they must throw it in there. And they gave it to us just for information's sake. You like to read it. But I don't think it really applied to us. That was.
Yes, George?
And also, there was some discussion there that one of the big issues that's probably going to flow out over the next couple of years is the relationship between the city and the library. Things like how development charges should be reflected on our statements, and how the relationship of funding between the city and library is to be reflected in the statements going forward. But that was more just a discussion that we had on the table as opposed to any specific action. But just something I guess the audit committee will keep its eye on.
So I, again, need a mover and a seconder.
I don't know, it's Robin, you got any comments on that meeting? Did I miss anything?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question then for you then? Was there any discussion with regards to cybersecurity? Because you're saying there's issues
Well,
that we could,
just in general terms, nothing specifically.
are there any concerns that we have as a library?
No.
No?
Not as part of the audit. I imagine it's an ongoing concern of Paul's that keeps him awake at night, but I don't think there was anything in the audit that was part of that.
Can I just comment on that briefly? Obviously, it is a cause of concern. I think one of the strategies that we've adopted over the years has been to minimize our data collection. So we don't have any credit card information. That's all handled through third parties. In terms of our registration procedures, when we register a customer, although we check for a driver's license as a form of ID, staff confirm that's been checked, but we don't actually record the driver's license information. So I think we do our best to protect our information, but then also to adopt strategies that minimize what we retain in terms of personal information, so that we become less of a target.
That's good. I think it's something we need to keep on the radar though. Excellent.
Anything else? Now, mover and seconder. George, seconder. Jennifer, all in favor? New business. Board policy review list, which is fairly substantial.
Yes, thank you. The report 9.1 really outlines all of the board policies and the policies that we've reviewed during this current term of board. And I think what you can see, I've been working with the admin team on making sure that we do a fair bit of policy review while the board, or while you're in your last year of term. So we're planning on bringing a number of policies back. We distributed this for comment, so if you have any questions, you can either raise them tonight or let myself and the chair know if there's any policies that you're of particular concern about. I think one of the things you're going to see as we bring the policies back, we're doing some policy consolidation, so that in some cases we have created separate policies that could more effectively be combined into one policy, so you get a complete picture. So this, I think, around collections, Michael's doing work on that. The other point is that we're also looking at our access to policies, and there's more policies that we should be posting on our website than we have to date. And so part of this process is us updating those policies and making sure that they're all posted.
Is the list of policies, is there a priority order to the review? Because it seems like it's an awful lot of staff time, well, and then board time for us to go through the different policies. So are there ones with greater risk attached to them that we should be reviewing first, or ones that need refresh because it's been a greater length of time, or what criteria are you going to use to prioritize how we see these?
I think we're reviewing all of them. Certainly the time period is an issue, but it's more a sense of policies that are really out of date and in need of updating. Although it is a fairly long list, a lot of them are straightforward, and so that what we're hoping to do every month is mixing it up in that if we have a policy that looks like, from our perspective, it doesn't really need to be changed, along with one that's, or two that are having more review, so that the intention would be to balance those out with the board. So we may include some policies, certainly every month, that need some fair bit of work, but then also bring back to the board policies that, in a sense, from our sense, we don't think it needs changing, and then that way we can kind of balance out the work. So there will be a few policies attached to all of the board packages, but we're going to make sure that we don't have a super long board package, and that so that we'll balance those out. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and I appreciate that question also. Madam Chair, through here, on some of the line items, there's no X on either one. Is that just because we're not going to look at it, or it doesn't affect us, but we seem to have a title for it? Like conflict of interest, court bans on publication of evidence.
Right. Okay, and we could, I think the answer to that is that there's not too many of those, and our anticipation was, when we started to review the list, was that we would only identify priority ones, so that, for example, I'm looking at the records management policy or the court ban on, that policy from our perspective doesn't really need to be changed, and it's not that important. So it's more just the volume of policies. But if any of those policies the board wishes to review and reaffirm, then that would be appropriate. So the anticipation would be the ones that aren't checked would be reviewed by the board that's appointed by council next year.
Are these policies available for anyone to see in the public if they come in? Are they in a standard location all the time?
Well, we post most of them on our website, and this is what we're in the process of doing, which is there were some policies that we've discovered weren't posted, and so we're in the process of making those all available. And our typical practice, we don't have binders of these policies, but if someone asks for a policy, staff know where to find them, and we would print them up.
I see some in here, like social media policies and different things like that. I think that, they're probably ones that you want to look at. It looks like this one's already been reviewed, but knowing the timelines, to keep looking at those, right? Thank you.
Anyone else? So this is a mover and a second to receive this for information and planning.
And as the report states, council at the subcommittee has passed a motion regarding potentially renaming or asking the library board to investigating renaming the central library after former Mayor Victor Cox. And so now my understanding is that still needs to be approved by council committee and then by council, which would happen in March. So we thought it would be an appropriate time to bring the naming policy forward for the board to review before we have formal direction from council. I know myself, and then we're certainly investigating this potential request that may be coming. Are there any questions?
So, Madam Chair, as probably the board knows, Councillor Pearson and I serve on the Facility Namings Committee. Councillor Pearson's the actual chair. And so just to be absolutely clear, we made sure that committee, which is a subcommittee of the Standing Committee of Council, we made sure that our colleagues were aware that the library board has its own policy on naming, so they were respectful of that. And the motion, which carried unanimously amongst the 5 members that were there that day, basically asked that the library board consider, not exclusively, that it be just left with the library board to consider renaming Central, possibly after former great late Mayor Victor Cox, but it was one of a number of options to be explored. But it did specify Central Library to be looked at, but one of a number of options to be explored. And through my office, working with your chief librarian, your chair, your vice chair, and possibly past chair, and Councillor Pearson, and Councillors Collins and Farr, who raised it publicly as a possibility, looking at the feasibility of it a few weeks ago when Global Spectrum came in about the first Ontario Centre, naming rights and the $3.5 billion they're giving us over 10 years. My office is setting up a meeting with Chief Librarian Takala, Councillor Pearson's the other councillors I mentioned, and your chair, vice chair, past chair, just to have an informal discussion as to can we all, if you will, land together at the end of the day in the same way, and either agree to disagree or whatever the case might be. Rumblings I'm already hearing is that other options, Madam Chair, from both the family members of the Cops family through several colleagues of ours that are close to them, Councillor Pearson and I, we're already hearing that there may be more appropriate facilities and or amenities in the city of Hamilton, but it's still a passed motion by the subcommittee. I suspect council, committee and council, I suspect, will ratify it to even give it that opportunity to be explored. But I want this board to be rest assured, absolutely no obligation, and you're being consulted through and through. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ditto.
That's what I'm thinking, George, is sort of
Yeah.
a little to his shoulder.
Yeah. Well, just one thing, since I noticed when the policy was approved and when it was revised and then revised again, and for some strange reason I've been here all 3 times of those, so I wanted to give a little bit of just a quick historical context. One of the things that I do recall from the past times that the board has discussed this policy is that there has been a great deal of hesitation amongst the board to have the facilities themselves named after the people. Though when I reread the way our policy has turned out, it's actually a more it talks less about that than I remember us having in our discussions. This isn't the first time this has come up, because there have been suggestions for Mayor Jack McDonald, there have been suggestions in Ancaster and so on. So there have been other issues that other times that this has come forth, and so of course while we have a history of some great people in the city that have been got us where we are, there's always been a concern that we only have so many facilities, and that's not necessarily the best way to bring this forward. So there has been a history of that hesitancy, but I mean, the policy is what it is, but I just want to have that historical context.
Yeah, that's good, because there are people on board. It's good.
I just wanted to confirm, based on the policy, that there would be that kind of formal, once that meeting occurred that you were speaking about, there would be a formal letter of request that had some of that biographical information and relevance of his work to the library, etc. Would that would happen after the meeting that you're speaking about?
Yeah, I can't remember the last. I remember there was some that came here, and I can't remember what the letter contained. I wasn't sure whether when the letter is formulated, does it reflect what our policy requirements are, or does it just come in line and then we say, well, this is what our policy states, and that's not what this letter provides for us?
Can I answer that?
Go ahead, Paul, please check.
No, I was just going to say,
I was going to say, Madam Chair, through to Claire. Claire's asking basically if council were to ratify the subcommittee's request, yes, all formal documentation would come to this board and say, here's all the evidence that, the subcommittee thinks may be appropriate for this facility to be renamed, but again, that would be in full consultation with the board. And the informal meeting that I'm setting up is just to maybe give us a little preliminary insight and discussion amongst a couple of our colleagues that had originally thought this might be a good opportunity for naming. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. I really
no, that's okay. If I could just add that,
Sorry,
I
Paul.
think one of the things that we're doing is we have a lot of resources. Margaret Houghton, our archivist, has access to a great amount of information about former Mayor Victor Cobbs. And so we are doing some investigation in preparation for the discussions. And my hope is that whatever the direction council goes in, that we'd be able to assist for providing historical documentation to support and make sure that council's making an informed decision. So I know there's been suggestion of parks and different things where, and my hope is that library staff can help provide information to help make an informed decision. And I think that's something that we're already working on, and it's a great resource, and so hopefully we'll be able to add to the discussion.
I just want to quickly thank Councillor Jackson for the assurances that he's given the board, because frankly,
Into designating Kenilworth Library as a historical building, and that it get designated under the Act, and that there be an investigation. And so my suggestion to the board would be that the board approve a motion supporting this.
Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And what the direction is that the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee, of which I am a member, add this to the registry of properties of interest. And then it would be given a timeline if you're in support of it. That can go back to the board, to the subcommittee, and they can put it on a timeline. And right now, we're probably up to 2017, 2018, Pennyworth falls in there. So that would be how this would fall in place. But then you'd be on a register where you'd be flagged. If you came in for any permits or any works to be done, that would trigger.
Then we've done all major renovations and so on, so that was a concern of mine.
We-
Continue?
I live in a heritage, or I used to live in a heritage house. It costs a lot of money. And, you know, is there any, there's no, I mean, kind of library as well. I mean, and there's maybe nothing much we can do about it, but I just like to draw on the board that by doing this and going through this, and maybe I'll make it forward, it's like going to end up adding substantially to any renovations or future development of the property. And we just should be aware of that, but that's just life, I guess.
And I think what the background, just if I could add to that, potentially the timing, I think in some ways the timing is major uplift and another capital renovation project of Kenilworth anytime in the near future to the board isn't on the radar. So the practical sort of, it's true that there are some building, but I think those constraints aren't actually going to affect what we would be doing at Kenilworth.
Madam Chair, and just some historical, and I know that we had a board member about a year or so ago, I remember speaking to Paul about this, that had raised a thought, and I had advised that, well,
What is the risk of not having this building listed on the on a municipal heritage list? To manage that building, if something happens, like the whole HVAC system needs to be replaced, and you're ripping out walls or something to accommodate that, well then there's barriers if it's a heritage designation. You're trying to work with it to to maintain it. So I guess I'm just trying to understand what the advantage is for this particular building when we've already demonstrated that commitment to heritage, or why would we want to pursue this?
I think there's an effort underway to pursue it anyway, and so it's the board, in a sense, it's being considered by this council committee, and the question is, does the library board not support designating it as a heritage? And I think just in terms of the positioning of the board, do we want people have a lot of love for this historic building, and they want to get it designated under the Ontario Heritage Act? So whether does the library board want to try to prevent that? I guess it's really a board decision. But the downside of doing it, I think, is limited, and I think in general we like to support preserving cultural heritage in the community. So by supporting this, it positions us in terms of supporting. That's the only benefit, really.
Does it attract additional funding from other levels of government if we have a historical building? Does it open
there
up
may be assistance as far as any renovations under our heritage funding program that may be available going forward in the future.
But that is for the heritage features, so not
A heritage building is designated as such, then these things go forward. Is that correct? So I think this, to clarify sort of your point, it's not that we get to choose, it's just we get to choose whether we say, hurrah, and that's a really good idea, or if we say, no, we don't really like that idea, but we know you're gonna do it. Is that right?
Yeah.
There's correct, they're under the Heritage Act now, anyone can request a building, it doesn't have to be a building they own, it can be a building they know of interest, that they want to have designated, they can bring that forward without the owner's support, knowledge, or anything. And that's the a willing party putting the request forward and providing to the board that that initiative's going forward, then obviously that's the board members here to say, are you in support of it? Just as Paul said, you can say no, but you really aren't worried about anything happening at Kenmore. So you have to stall off there. Is there an emotional sort of perspective saying, we're supportive of the city and its heritage protection, and certainly Kenmore is worthy of that. We don't see that as a problem, so that's what the board is going to say.
No, and I was just going to add that we always try to work with our ward councillors from the city, and in this case, we have the ward councillor supporting this designation. And so I think that should at least be a consideration for the board, in that he's been very supportive of the library and values the library in his community. And so I think we should consider his, and he did forward it to us for information to give us the heads up that this is working. And I do think it would be a positive message for us to, but if the board were to support that, I think it's reinforcing a good thing.
I think the key word is support. It's not approve, it's a support. Yes, Councilor.
Madam Chair, not that this board is really involved with economic development, but I'm talking to Councillor Marula. He sees this designation in terms of permanency, and he's trying to do his best to revive Kenilworth itself, mostly that business district from Barton to Maine. He sees the library, the rentals that were done, the heritage possible designation as a pillar, as kind of like an anchor to help him do what he did with the late Councillor Morelli on Ottawa Street and all the rebirth that occurred there. He's looking for a similar type thing, and he sees us playing an integral role with that. So I just thought I'd share that as well. Thank you.
Anyone else? Rich?
But just wondering if the board is in agreement in principle, would there be some type of correspondence or closing the loop to say that this was discussed at the board meeting and this is the feeling of the board?
And at your direction, I would write a letter or get the board chair. We could officially correspond with the city notifying that the board has made this decision. We would do that for
and
sure.
And it should be in the minutes of the board
Oh,
that,
yes.
that this decision board to, not sure if it's going to go to committee of the whole or go directly to the Heritage Committee and I think planning committees were, maybe planning. We'll find out for sure.
Did I see any other? No. Thank you. Okay, so we all have the recommendation in front of us, so I want to know if we could have a mover and a seconder for that recommendation of support.
Yeah, I mean, isn't this just for information?
No, it's a recommendation that we support it. You don't have to agree, we can take nays. But I still don't have a mover or a seconder. And Rich, all those in favor? And again, okay, unanimous. Thank you. The big threat, huh? Okay. No private and confidential.
Some boards 15 years from now are going to say, why did those buggers do that?
Because all of our railway stations were destroyed. That's why we did it. We want to be, I think we should be supportive of anything that's, any heritage building. I mean, there's so many times in the past where things have, stop with the money. Okay, thank you.
Do we have to formalize the Are we saying our support is the
Yes,
letter?
we're gonna
It'll be
do,
in the
we'll do a letter. We already